Hello, everyone. This is Ron Gerber from Angel Beat. I really appreciate everyone spending time in their Friday afternoon to hear this fantastic talk from Dave from Extreme Networks. Though if you're like me, it's like every day is the same. You know, there's, as my kids comment, there's not a big difference between Fridays and Sundays and Tuesdays in this coronavirus world. But I think this content is going to be really useful because as everyone is now working from home, the whole notion of networking is changing even more rapidly. Extreme is at the leading edge of this. And we've asked Dave to speak about the whole notion of an end-to-end, as it says here, enterprise cloud-driven network, which is so critically important. And as you can see, now Dave is, even though it might seem like he's on the beach, if you look at his video stream, is in fact practicing proper social distancing. So I'm going to turn it over to Dave to give us all these great insights. I want to encourage anyone, and I'll be monitoring this, if you've got any questions within the Zoom platform, there's a pretty simple chat window. You can chat to me and I'll interject a little bit and moderate it to make sure that Dave can answer any and all of your questions. And I think he's also going to comment on Wi-Fi 6. As many people have commented to me, there's a little bit of confusion when the IEEE had all the Wi-Fi standards alphabetically, and there was a little confusion between N and G and A and AC and N. And so now I think they've taken a more logical approach, so to speak, and 6 is more advanced than 5. And I think that's the way we're doing it. So I think that'll be very useful. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dave, and I wish everyone well. And I think you'll find this very informative.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ron. So thanks to everybody for tuning in. Obviously, the purpose of this is we're going to talk about cloud in terms of wireless and wired networking and your enterprise network, and how companies, both small and large, are migrating to the cloud if they haven't already, but are planning on migrating to the cloud for managing their network. And it could be for one site or it could be worldwide. And then as a bonus, we will also talk about Wi-Fi, which is actually how I kind of built my career on. So quickly, that's me. My name's David Coleman. I'm Certified Wireless Network Expert number 4. I'm a Director of Product Marketing at Extreme Networks. I'm always looking to get more Twitter followers. So, there's my Twitter address at Mr. Multipath. So follow me if you can. And let's just jump right into it. Oh, one more thing, one more shameless plug. I'm also the co-author of a lot of networking books, especially on Wi-Fi, including this big fat book about Wi-Fi right here called the Certified Wireless Network Administrator Study Guide. It is a vendor neutral book about Wi-Fi. It's in its 5th edition. And our publishers tell us it's the biggest selling Wi-Fi book in the world. So it's about 8,000 copies a year. Okay, so our agenda is I'm going to talk about all these things right here. I'm not going to read through all the bullets. Let's just jump right through, right into it, please. Okay, so one of the reasons that you really need to, people need to think about moving to the cloud to manage their corporate networking solutions is simply because of the absolute device explosion that has happened over the recent years, and exponentially it gets bigger and bigger every year. And the bulk of it has been wireless, but it's also wired devices too, with the advent of IoT, which I know is an overused buzzword, but it's a real thing. Actually, by 2020, right now there are about 50 billion connected devices to the internet by the end of this year. By 2025, there will be 75 billion devices connected to the internet. And that's about 10 times the amount of devices than there are people on the planet Earth. And then the projections right now by 2035 is there should be 1 trillion devices connected to the internet. And the bulk of those will probably be wireless, but you know, there's still wired devices as well. Okay. Okay, so and a little deeper into this as well is that, you know, in the age of acceleration, you know, your devices are faster and smaller and your information is faster. Moore's Law was published in 1965 and loosely says that the pace of innovation doubles every 2 years. And that acceleration has been going on since 1965 for some of you that might have been around then or were born before then, like myself. By 2020, we're going to see, but by the end of this year, we're going to see 11.6 billion wireless mobile connected devices, mobile devices like smartphones and iPads connected. And every second, 1.7 megabytes of data is created for every person on the planet Earth, okay? Monthly, we're seeing 49 exabytes of data traffic. I don't even know what those numbers mean, okay? So bottom line is, I mean, our whole society globally, we have a digital transformation that is driving us towards the cloud and the need for the cloud. So I have a feeling that most people on this webinar are already familiar with cloud, but for those of you who are not, I'm going to speak of this not just from cloud technology, but from cloud networking. So cloud networking is any kind of type of infrastructure where networking capabilities and the resources can be available on demand through some sort of third-party service that hosts them on a cloud platform. When we think of cloud in general, and we'll kind of turn back to cloud networking here in a few minutes, but when we think in cloud of general, we think of it typically in 3 different ways. One is infrastructure as a service, okay? So when that model, the company offloads all the compute, networking, and data storage assets that reside in a cloud provider like Amazon or Google data centers, as opposed to residing in the company's own data centers. So some of the key benefits of infrastructure as a service is it eliminates capital expense and reduces your ongoing cost. It removes the upfront expense of setting up and managing your own company data center. Okay, so it's a lot more economical option for small businesses as well as large businesses. It also, high availability and disaster recovery are expensive, and it requires skill sets, technology, and staff. And so infrastructure as a service can reduce this kind of cost and to the customer. And it also, infrastructure as a service also frees up your own personal IT staff to focus on your core business, rather than spending time and money maintaining IT infrastructure, okay? Now, when you think of cloud in general, you also think as provider as a service, or platform as a service, I should say, which is a complete development environment in the cloud, and with resources that enable you to develop sophisticated cloud enterprise applications. Now, what this does, and is what I like to call cloud speed innovation, and I'll talk more about that. But if you are using a service like AWS or Google as to manage your databases and container services and queuing services, that gives you decreased coding time and development time. It streamlines the development process for your coders, for your application that you're going to have in the cloud. In our case, we're going to be talking about a network management application. And I've been absolutely amazed about what my company's coders and engineers have been able to accomplish in literally sometimes a daily process, cloud speed innovation. And of course, the platform that everybody is also familiar with cloud as well is the software as a service platform. It's built on top of the 2 previous platforms I spoke of. My company uses something called, our application is called ExtremeCloud IQ. We'll talk a little bit more about it later in the presentation, but basically what it is, it's a enterprise network management application that is a management application to manage all your switches and access points and wireless users and wired users all over the world. And so, the advantage of cloud software as a service is that it provides sophisticated enterprise applications to users without the need for them to have to install or update or maintain any hardware or middleware. It's all, you know, the application, in this case, a management application for your network exists in the cloud and is available in a subscription type model. Now, one of the things that I always like to talk about is generations of cloud. And my company we like to think of ourselves in the 4th generation of cloud. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but I just want to tell you historically what happened with my company. Before I worked for Extreme, I worked for a company for 10 years called Aerohive Networks, and Aerohive Networks was purchased last August by Extreme Networks. And Aerohive was a wireless networking company that was one of the first 2 companies to do cloud management of Wi-Fi devices, access points in wireless. And we were kind of ahead of the time 10 years ago when we had what we'd like to call a 1st generation cloud. Now, when I say 1st generation cloud, it's not what you're thinking of today. It was basically single tenant, and it was virtualized. It was simply standing up VM servers in a data center. It served us well, and it was revolutionary at the time, but it was not globally scalable, okay? And on-premises solutions were, quite frankly, for many, many years, a lot more popular and more prevalent than our 1st generation cloud, which was basically resided in just racks and data centers. Now, we've since moved on, and this is where everybody's headed. And you know, once again, I don't intend this to be a deep dive into cloud technology, but to get to the current generations of cloud, any application is going to have to be built on microservices. So the simple definition of microservice-based architecture is that it's a software development technique that structures an application as a collection of loosely coupled services. And the true benefit of true microservices architecture is that the application is broken down into these smaller modules and services that enable parallel development as well as updating, which improves resiliency and scale. So, you know, in layman's terms, a lot of times I like to say, instead of having this big monolithic application, you slice it and dice it into these little different components that can be updated and improved and enhanced on the fly. And any good cloud application, whether it's a network management application or whatever, is going to be built this day on microservices. And that's where we went at my company. Aerohive went, my previous company, tried to go about 6 years ago. 5 or 6 years ago, we moved to a 2nd generation cloud where we did the introduction of microservices for all the reasons that I just stated, to get better analytics, better resiliency, and better innovation. Now, that being said, I always like to show this funny little graphic right here, because getting to 1st to 2nd generation, it was not easy, okay? And I've always been honest about this. When my previous company, when we initially tried this about 5 or 6 years ago, the cloud kind of looked like that. It wasn't a happy cloud. Let me put it that way. And we failed, quite frankly. And so it takes the right DevOps team, the right engineering team, it takes the right corporate leadership to even get from point A to point B. Now, the good news is that we've moved well beyond this, and quite frankly, most of our competitors have as well. But however, not everybody. There's still some of our competitors that are still trying to get to this point where they're still trying to get their network management platform to be based on a microservices model that's built on top on a platform like AWS or Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure. And then when you get to 3rd generation, that's when you start really collecting data. And that's when you have, lots and lots of data. And I'll talk more about this, that, data collection and the data cloud is king, because once you start accumulating massive amounts of data, that helps with your real-time innovation, and it also gives you a path towards machine learning and AI, which once again, I know they're overused buzzwords, but I mean, this is where everybody's headed. We're already doing a lot of stuff in machine learning to do for data analytics, so that we can present and offer suggestions based on what is going on with your corporate network. So, so my company has moved from first to second to a third generation, where we're already doing work with machine learning capabilities. And just recently, in the last couple of weeks, we like to call what we've moved into a fourth generation, where we're starting to do some dynamic segmentation, but we've moved to a completely containerized microservices, which gives us about a 35% better efficiency and complete scalability. And resiliency. We can, I always get asked all the time, how many networking devices can connect to your cloud? The answer is, we don't know the limit, because we can scale and elastically scale up and down and sideways on the fly. And that can also be automated. We can stand up a regional data center on any of the the AWS, Google, or Microsoft platforms. We can stand one up in under 30 minutes as well. And a little bit later on, I'll talk about the 11 nines of data durability, which is part of our first generation cloud as well. So quickly, a few more things, and then I think I'm gonna have some interesting stats for you here in a minute that you're gonna enjoy. But why are companies even moving to the cloud, whether it's for network management or anything? Well, it's all those little funky icons that you see right there. Simplicity and ease of use. To me, that's one of the biggest things that people love about the cloud. From provisioning to the management of their APs, their switches, their devices, their users, customers and companies, IT administrators, they want simplicity. Okay. Now I'm an old school guy. I'm a longtime guy that I've always been a big CLI guy. And the good news is our solution can, if you really want it, you can still do CLI, troubleshooting, and configuration from the cloud. But the 95% of the customer base, they don't want that. They want simplicity. Of course, you want the speed, the continuous delivery and innovation, the data analytics that you get from machine learning. I already mentioned the scalability, being able to scale dynamically and on the fly. And security is a big, big aspect. And I'm going to talk more about security in this presentation, because I got to be honest with you, especially in the early days of cloud, people were just frightened of it. So security is a very big component. You need to be able to, and I'll talk more about that in a later slide. So I have some interesting stats here. And to me, if you're switching to cloud networking now, so let's focus more using cloud management for networking, is it's going to save you money. Okay, so the research that we've done and pretty much pans out that it significantly is going to reduce your deployment costs and your operating costs of your access network compared to hosting it in-house in your own data center. So as you can see, any kind of cloud-driven networking offers both CapEx and OpEx savings, and it's going to save you a lot of money, okay? 26% lower costs on hardware, 30% lower costs on maintenance, lot less cost on power and cooling and floor space. A lot of people don't think about that one right there. And also, lower costs in your daily network administration. And that's important, because that's another one I think doesn't get enough press, because it frees up your own IT staff to deal with the business of dealing with their own employees and dealing with the business of whatever the company is, as opposed to having to troubleshoot and maintain a data center. Two big numbers here. Let's talk about migration to the cloud in 2020. So some statistics we had pre-COVID were these numbers right here. 77% of enterprises have at least one application or portion of their enterprise computing infrastructure already in the cloud. And 95% of organizations will be relying on some sort of software as a service model for their application delivery in the next 18 months, with infrastructure as a service increasing to 83%, and platform as a service 73%. Now, this is all cloud applications, not just networking for these statistics. Obviously, my main focus is on using the cloud for managing your enterprise network. But we've seen similar trends. To be honest with you, managing networks in the cloud is kind of, in my mind, has been a little bit behind some of the other applications that's moved to the cloud, but catching up fast and very fast. And pretty much I always like to tell people, you're going to the cloud whether you like it or not. And the good news is most people like it, and that's where they want to go. We're in changing times. I almost hesitate to kind of show you this, but because I don't want you to think I'm trying to take advantage of a pandemic, but we did some recent research on a survey a couple of weeks ago that showed that post-COVID-19, that CIOs now are considering cloud adoption. Their consideration for cloud adoption has jumped from 54% to 89%. And the reason of that is right, well, let's be honest here, is that people aren't necessarily in their own data centers right now. My company still maintains some servers right now at our corporate offices, and we have a skeleton crew at best of 2 or 3 people that are checking up on it. If it's in the cloud, you don't have to deal with that. So that's, once again, another reason I think you're going to see even more consideration about cloud migration here post-COVID. And I think the numbers pretty much speak for that. Speaking of COVID, it's really changing the way we think about networking, okay? Ron and I were actually talking before this call that, when this is all over, when the zombie apocalypse is over, and hopefully there's a cure next week, let's all hope so and pray for that. But when that happens, I think companies are still going to change the way they do business, because I can tell you right now, they figured out that, working from home before used to be one of these things that, oh, well, we'll allow it, okay? Now it's like, oh, maybe we should suggest it. And I think you'll see a lot more and more companies post-COVID be more receptive to employees working from home. We've already seen, believe it or not, we've actually seen a lot of productivity levels go up from working at home. And so I think because of that, you're going to need companies deploying networking solutions. They need remote access solutions. They need VPN solutions so that their employees can get back into the corporate network and access those corporate resources from their home. And so having some sort of cloud management solution to manage either a layer 2 VPN solution, like the one I'm showing you right here. And if you can go to that blog that I also wrote on this very topic as well, or maybe a more traditional layer 3 branch solution, smaller branches as well. A cloud management solution to manage either remote access at small branches or at home. I think we're going to see more and more shifts towards remote networking, okay, in satellite offices and home networking, and not just your corporate network in buildings at headquarters. So let's talk a little bit about simplifying your network operations in general. So let's talk about traditional networking, and then we'll talk about this when you moved to a cloud infrastructure. So, with traditional networking, first you would need, if you have to go through a series of steps, deployment steps, first you would have to determine how many new APs and switches and routers are needed. You would have to do a wireless coverage assessment and a validation survey. Then you would have to procure and install all your new networking devices. So you'd have to install them, get them installed, and this means independent capacity. Excuse me, I got a little bit ahead of myself, but then once they've been installed and procured, post-deployment, you will need to determine the need for additional resources, more wireless access points, controllers. You may also need some sort of monolithic network management system platform to be installed to give you better centralized management of all these devices. And then throughout the life cycle, you will need some way to provision licenses and features and support and configuration. And a lot of that might have to be local, and in procuring network licenses, and then once again continuing to configure throughout the lifecycle and deploying additional network devices. And it's typically, in most cases with traditional networking, a combination of centralized and local configuration, which means the local deployment and support and truck rolls are always going to be needed. And, you know, that doesn't quite scale as what you have and it's not the zero-touch provisioning that you often get with a cloud management solution. So with cloud-driven networking, there's a lot less steps. And it's going to make your IT department's life a lot easier. So you determine how many access points or switches are needed, just like before. And you will do some sort of validation survey, okay? Then you procure and install the devices for your switches and routers. A lot of this, though, involves zero-touch provisioning, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then you basically procure your licenses. And with cloud management, typically licensing is much simpler because it's usually a single device license on a subscription type model. And you're paying per device, as opposed to some of the traditional networking where you have to get licenses just for the licensing, as well as your support. Okay, and then you continue to configure and deploy additional networking devices, but here's the beauty of this. You have centralized management and configuration, all from the cloud, and you can manage your entire network for global companies all over the world, okay? Now, we don't have any companies that are in outer space yet, but we have enterprise companies, big and small, using cloud management for all their networking devices all in one cloud application, and they can see what's going on from that one central pane of glass. And the zero-touch provisioning is just as important, and that's what this slide is about. So in today's world, in cloud networking, a network administrator needs to create what we call a network policy, which is just a fancy word for configuration settings for either an access point, switch, router, or firewall, or whatever. Okay, and that policy exists in the cloud, and you need, as a IT department, to be able to ship the APs to any remote location or switches. Okay, they literally, you plug them in, and as long as they have a gateway to the internet, they need to be able to call home automatically to the cloud, download their network configuration automatically, boom, instant Wi-Fi, instant wired networking. And that's where we're at today with cloud networking. So you don't have to have, as long as you have good planning in place and your network policies configured in advance, the people that are installing the equipment, they just need to know where it goes. So they do the installation and they plug it in, calls back to the cloud, downloads the config, instant networking. Now, obviously, it's going to be a little bit more complex than that, but it really is that's where it's getting to. And by the way, it's not just our customers that love this, it's our partners that love this capability as well, because it makes their lives easier. Now, any good platform that is for network management, whether it's my companies or competitors, they need to be able to manage basically, the long-term goal is to be able to manage your network all the way from enterprise network, all the way from the access layer to the core. And that's why I'm so excited about the Extreme acquisition of Aerohive, because Aerohive mainly had access points and a wireless solution, where Extreme had wired networking solutions going all the way from switches to routers and all kinds of applications, including intrusion detection and locationing applications and IoT applications. We're going through this cloudification where we're putting the whole portfolio in, so everything can be managed in the cloud. And what that gives you as a customer is once again, total visibility into your entire network. So you should be able to look at manage, configure, and monitor your access points. like you're seeing right here. So this is, and that's going to be in real time and historical. We use a data horizon currently of 90 days historical. So at any given time, you can see up to 90 days worth of information. And for some of our bigger retail customers, we can actually do a data horizon of up to 13 months. But you need that real-time and historical views that you can adjust via timelines for your devices like this AP right here. And same thing for the wired devices like switches and routers. So same thing, you need to be able to monitor your switches and all your wired networking infrastructure. You can do this from one location. And then let's not forget, what is networking all about? It's about the users, right? It's about the users and the clients, okay? I always like to say client and user experience is king. So you have to have a really good management and monitoring solution for your clients and users to see what's going on with the health of either their wireless or their wired network, all the way down to the individual user or device. And that's what the beauty of cloud networking gives you. Traditional networking doesn't give you this because you have to log into multiple devices, or you might have to have some sort of monolithic network management platform. Having a cloud management platform gives you that global capability for centralized and unified management and monitoring. And of course, this is where everybody's headed. And we're very excited about what we're moving in and starting to do already with machine learning and eventually AI as well is, what if based on all the data that is being learned from from not just one customer's perspective, but everybody's perspective, what if we can look at that data, which by the way is metadata. I want to stress that there is no user information or user traffic that is ever sent up to the cloud. This is metadata that is sent up by APs and switches and routers into the cloud about what's going on in the network. Okay, so no user information for privacy reasons, never goes up into the cloud. That's very important. But by looking at this metadata and collecting it from millions of devices and millions of users and clients, we can start getting predictive. And so we can actually do things where we can make suggestions saying, hey, based on one location, based on what we've seen and what we've learned about your network and other people's network, we're going to suggest a change. So in this example right here, 20 megahertz 40 megahertz channels is something people use sometimes, and it can work if done and deployed properly, but sometimes it can be detrimental. So in this example right here, the actual cloud machine learning could suggest, analytics can suggest a change. Say, you know what? Maybe try using 20 megahertz channel instead of 40, and we think, the cloud thinks your life will be better. And then we can show you before that change, during that change, and then after that change, whether or not the cloud and the data analytics were correct. And this is where things are heading, where a lot of times using the machines to do a lot of projections and what-if scenarios on how to maybe tweak and enhance your network. And enhanced visibility in the network, the cloud gives you that as well. So this is something called maximum client capabilities that I'm very proud of is in our cloud solution is we look at frames that wireless clients send about their capabilities. And we can then visualize that all the way down to the single user or lots of users at different locations. And this is a great way to learn about what the client population is. And that actually is kind of tough in a while. A lot of people don't understand that in the Wi-Fi world. It's, the wireless population isn't just what deemed by IT department. And we live in but we've always lived in a BYOD world. And all wireless clients are not created equal. They have different capabilities, and being able to look at certain types of packets and frames and then visualize what the capabilities of your clients are can help you plan for a better wired network. And then, of course, automating troubleshooting from the cloud is essential. So we actually have 24/7 monitoring that's basically automatic for connectivity issues for wireless clients, especially for 802.1x and pre-shared key. And there's for 802.1x, there's like 15 things that can go wrong. Well, we're constantly monitoring that. And if there's any kind of connectivity issues, that can be displayed immediately, and suggested remedies can be presented to the IT administrator. In the future, we might even have situations where we can actually, depending on what kind of level of power you want to give to the cloud, even allow some of the minor fixes to happen automatically. We're even exploring things like automatic RMAs, for example, as well, where based on what we're seeing on a performance of networking devices, we can actually suggest that you RMA a device before you even know you have to RMA a device. And of course, comparative analytics and networking, cloud-driven networking is really big, and it's all about the data, the metadata that we collect from lots and lots of customers. And so we can then do comparative analytics on different verticals like healthcare and retail, and even show you statistically, okay, all right, so you're a K through 12 school system, and you're only in like the 47% percentile of what we see through K through 12, or same thing with healthcare, and then make suggestions on how they could enhance their network in that particular vertical moving forward. Another thing I want to say too, you're going to see a lot of cloud companies, and I know we're on a path to do this, and you'll see other cloud networking companies do it as well. You're going to see a lot of verticalization in cloud management as well. So you're going to see a lot of analytics specifically for different kinds of industries. We already have a whole dashboard platform for retail analytics, and we'll have other ones as well for different industries as well, education, healthcare. So you're going to see a lot of verticalization in the cloud as well from an analytics viewpoint. So I mentioned security. Security is big, and obviously you need, in wireless networks, everything should always be encrypted. But what about the communications from your APs and your switches back up to the cloud? That has to be encrypted. What about your data that is in the platform like AWS? That has to be encrypted. And then of course, privacy is the big thing. And so that's why, we are, and most companies are moving towards being fully GDPR compliant for privacy laws in Europe, but that's finding its way into other nations as well. Something that my company did before everybody else is we're the first major cloud networking company to attain ISO 27001 certification for our cloud management application. So here's the trick though, AWS, Google, they're all ISO certified. They get their data center certified for security processes. So over here on the left is all the things that somebody like all the things that AWS does. What we've done is we've taken the extra step or mile to go through to get certified for all these processes as a company as a whole, as well as for our application, to ensure that any customer's data in our whole cloud solution from top to bottom is secure. So having that third-party validation for security is very, very important in my mind. And of course, availability. If you go with a platform provider like AWS or Google or Microsoft, it gives you the availability to stand up regional data centers very fast. And as I mentioned earlier, we can stand up a regional data centers up in 30 minutes. And also at the regional data centers, that's where customers' metadata resides as well, okay? Now, once again, this isn't user data. That's important to understand, but it's metadata about their network. And some countries have laws that it cannot leave the country. Like we have one regional data center in Frankfurt, because in Germany, they have very strict laws that any kind of information cannot leave the country, even if it's just metadata. India is the same way. So for that reason, we obviously have regional data centers built on AWS and other platforms all over the world. And of course, you need flexibility. So with our solution, and not everybody does this, but I'm proud to say that we do, is we have a public cloud solution. We also have a private cloud solution where we can do regional data centers that can either be we can stand up in your data centers or a privately segmented, hyper-segmented data center in the AWS platform. And it's basically it's a co-managed agreement with our DevOps teams. And then, we still do local on-premises solutions as well. Still to this day, there are some people that kind of like that hybrid model where they want, they just don't trust public or private cloud solutions and they want to go on premises. But more and more and more, I would say 90% of our customers have moved to the public cloud because of all the security mechanisms and the more public acceptance. But there are choices. Now, a couple more things here. So you have to have reliability and data durability. So, and we've accomplished both of these things. We like to call the 7 nines of uptime. Well, last year it just came out, we had 0 downtime last year, 0% downtime. Now, occasionally a microservice might go down, but it doesn't bring the whole application. And that microservice can be fixed usually within a matter of minutes or an hour's tops. But in terms of our cloud management application last year, we actually had 0 downtime, but most people strive for what they call the 7 nines of uptime with a cloud management solution. Basically, when you get into verticals like healthcare and stuff like that, it can't go down. It's unacceptable because sometimes lives depend on it, okay? And then data durability is important as well. So all your metadata that is collected, it has to be reliable and it can't be corrupted. So what we've been able to obtain is what's called the 11 nines of data durability. You've probably heard this touted around before, but basically what that means is if you had some sort of object that is in the cloud holding some data, and if you were doing constant read writes for 10,000 years, I believe the 1 in 10 million objects would be corrupted in 10,000 years. And that's basically where we're at. Now, here's the thing that's really gotten me the most excited about being in the cloud. I'm a Wi-Fi guy from 20 years ago, and I kind of fell into the cloud by joining Aerohive 10 years ago by mistake. But what has really been cool in the last couple of years with cloud speed is the cloud speed innovation. When you move to that 2nd and 3rd and now 4th generation cloud, you can really develop things and innovate using microservices and containers on the fly and fast. Sometimes the updates are daily. And you never notice, and a lot of times the users and the admins don't even notice. But one thing that a lot of people need, it's a little different for them because they're used to a more waterfall approach to development as opposed to the agile development that goes on in the cloud, is everything happens in phases. So instead of, okay, let's build this product and we'll beta test it and then it'll come out and yay, and then we'll add some new features later on. That's not the way the cloud works generally. The way the cloud works is everything's built in phases. So, and sometimes it can be, phase 1, phase 2, phase 19. So this is something called Client 360 view, where you can look at information of an individual wireless client. And you know what? It's been a year ago, it wasn't even around in our cloud platform, but it's gone over phases. And that's what this animation is showing you. Now, that's the 2nd phase. And then that's the 3rd phase. And I know you don't really know what that means, but it's constantly getting better is what I'm getting at. And I've watched this particular, just this one analytic and monitoring component in our cloud go through about 19 phases over the past year. And it's just been amazing to watch. And to me, I look forward to it every month and every week when new features come out and new monitoring analytics comes out. And the good thing is, so do our customers and our partners. They get excited about it. They get excited about the cloud speed innovation that comes on a monthly basis. Now, I mentioned if you're going to have a path to ML or AI, it requires massive amounts of data. I think this is an outdated slide. I think currently all the networking devices that we manage for all our customers now are sending up to 2 terabytes of data per second to the cloud to be processed. So big data is king. You need the data to get the analytics. And right now, this is an outdated slide too. I think right now we're getting an average daily data traffic of metadata from our customers of about 6 petabytes of data. But just to give you some numbers here, 1 petabyte of data is equal to 13.3 years of high definition video. So right now, every day, ExtremeCloud IQ processes the equivalent of about 80 years. I'm updating the slide on the fly here, but about 80 years of high definition video is processed in our cloud. And having that data is what gives you a path to better analytics. Okay. Of course, with any cloud solution, okay, especially for networking, it's got to be API driven. So in our particular solutions, fully API driven for identity APIs, configuring APIs, monitoring APIs, and cloud agnostic. So I mentioned all these platforms. Cool thing, I think we currently are the only networking company that has a cloud management application that can operate on all 3 of these platforms and at the same time. And we're doing it right now. And as a matter of fact, we've also found that certain industries prefer certain platforms. So let's be honest here, retail industry doesn't like AWS because they're a competitor. So most of our retail customers prefer Google Cloud. We've also seen that for a variety of reasons that Microsoft Azure is more preferred by a lot of healthcare customers. So sometimes different verticals might prefer to have their data exist on for different reasons on different platforms. So having a cloud agnostic network management application is important. So I mentioned ExtremeCloud IQ. You've seen a few little plugs. That is the name of our network management solution. I'm not going to get into it in great detail, but I've kind of talked of it more from a higher level, but we have a whole architecture built on all the things that we discussed. This is just a normal day at one of our regional data centers. What happens? 700 million authentications, 300 million network events. So I'm not going to read all these, but this is a medium-sized regional data center, and this is what happens on one of them in any given day. And these numbers are growing tremendously. A couple more plugs, and then I want to talk a little bit about Wi-Fi 6 and then open it up. I know I'm starting to go a little long, so save a few time for some questions, but if you're interested, we have a whole buyer's guide on cloud networking. So there's the link, and that QR code will take you there as well. Which brings me to my last topic. So it's kind of a little bonus topic. I thought I'd talk quickly about Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6E. Which is something I've been a technical evangelist for the past 1.5 years, because it really is a paradigm shift in Wi-Fi technology. So much like cloud technology has been a paradigm shift for networking management, this new Wi-Fi technology has been a paradigm shift on how Wi-Fi operates. So the Wi-Fi Alliance has introduced a new generational Wi-Fi naming system that helps users better understand what they expect. So, you know, my mom is like 83 years old, and if I say 802.11ax or 802.11n, she's going to look at me like, huh? But if I say, yeah, the new Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi 6, she goes, oh yeah, that's the new Wi-Fi. So that's why the Wi-Fi Alliance did this. So the new technology that is out right now is called 802.11ax. We'll talk a little bit in the next couple slides about it. You're going to hear it refer in the general public, with the average Joe being referred to more as Wi-Fi 6, where some of the older technologies right there, AC and N, might be referred to as Wi-Fi 4 and 5. So Wi-Fi 6 is the new generation Wi-Fi based on 802.11ax technology. Now, what does that mean? It uses new physical layer and MAC layer enhancements for better traffic management. So in the past, there's been too much of an emphasis on data rates in Wi-Fi and not on efficiency. And we don't have time to get into all of it. I'm going to show you one way things are getting more efficient, but data rates and speeds are actually overrated. Having a more efficient, because it's a half duplex medium, RF medium, having a more efficient RF half duplex medium is important. And that's what Wi-Fi 6 is all about. And if you can make things more efficient, then your throughput is going to go up as well, and everybody's going to be a lot happier. And that's what Wi-Fi 6 is all about. It does operate in both the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz frequency bands, and the new 6 gigahertz bands that I'm going to wrap this presentation up with in just a couple of minutes. Here's a comparison chart. I'm not going to go over all these things right here. The main thing that I want to talk about is the difference between what we've had in the past, 802.11a, G, N, and AC, which would be Wi-Fi 5, 4, 3, compared to what we have now. So in the past, if you look at this chart right here, think of that as channel width, and in one axis you have time, and the other axis you have channel width. So if I was a radio, like an access point, and I was transmitting, in the past, at any given time, only one radio could transmit on a channel. So maybe one client was transmitting. Guess what? On channel 6, all the other clients cannot. It's a listen before you talk medium. And then the next client transmits, and then the next, and then the AP, and the next. In other words, and if this is like a 20 megahertz channel, which is the average channel size for RF transmissions for Wi-Fi, all the clients are taking turns. Now, there is a protocol that deals with this. It's called Carrier Sense Multiple Access Collision Avoidance. And it's a fairness protocol to make sure everybody gets a free shot. It's pseudo-random to make sure everybody gets a free shot on the medium, and everybody will get to transmit at the medium, but it's like a walkie-talkie. When I'm talking to you on a walkie-talkie and I'm holding that button down, guess what? You're not talking at the same time. That's how radio frequency communications work. Problem with this is it's never been efficient. Because in most cases, for a 20 megahertz channel, you don't need 20 megahertz of frequency space to modulate data for single clients. So that's what 802.11ax is all about. What if an access point could split up a 20 megahertz channel and communicate with 2 clients at the same time by using 10 megahertz of frequency space for one client and 10 megahertz of frequency space for the other client? They're basically subdividing the channel into partitions called resource units. And maybe on the next downlink transmission, a AP could transmit down to 4 clients at the same time, with each client only needing 5 megahertz of frequency space. Or you could use the whole 20 megahertz, or split it up in 2 again, or 1, or back in, or various combinations. So before it was like an AP to a client transmission was like you. Now it can be, okay, 4 clients, you all get data at the same time. Clearly, that's a lot more efficient. This is called orthogonal frequency division multiple access. It's in Wi-Fi now with Wi-Fi 6. And guess what, gang? You already use this technology, because if you're using cell phones right now that use LTE, LTE is using this technology as well. So we've ported this technology down to Wi-Fi 6. Okay, and then the last thing, and then I'll see if, because I know I've gone a little long, see if we have any questions. This is exciting news. And in case you didn't see it, yesterday, actually, the FCC here in the United States just approved 1,200 megahertz of new frequency spectrum for unlicensed use here in the United States, meaning a whole boatload of new channels and frequency space, way more than we've ever had. And this is very clean frequency space. This is extremely exciting news. The FCC commissioners realize that Wi-Fi dumps billions of dollars in the United States economy. And so they've opened it up for unlicensed use. And you will start seeing, so if you start hear the term Wi-Fi 6E, which stands for Wi-Fi 6 Extended, that means it's 802.11ax technology operating in the 6 gigahertz bands. And you will start seeing products for this starting probably as early as 2021. The Europeans will also follow suit, not as much frequency space, and it remains to be seen what's going to happen in the rest of the world. But typically it's usually United States first, then Europe, and then other parts of the country. One last plug. I'm the author of this free little PDF booklet, ebook that you can download. It's called Wi-Fi 6 for Dummies. but it's not really for dummies. It's a pretty technical book. It'll teach you a complete deep dive on how Wi-Fi 6 technology works. So I'll leave that screen up if anybody wants to take a picture of the QR code or copy down the URL. And with that, I'm pretty much done. So I'll open it up for Ron or team. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer and here to serve.
Thanks, David. That was great. You know, that was a good full hour of in-depth content. Everyone, I really appreciate everyone spending time and being attentive. I'm just trying to see if we've got any more questions. You know, one thing maybe you could comment on a little more in depth, you know, a lot of great insights here, and maybe just explain. So if someone might be very excited about all the technology that Extreme AeroHive offers, but may have some equipment from other vendors already in place, maybe you could talk a little bit about the ease in which your team there at Extreme and your partners can overlay Extreme in that environment that may not currently have Extreme products or solutions.
Sure. So obviously, our cloud management solution only manages our products. Okay, it doesn't manage third-party or our competitor solutions. However, that's okay. So you may use a competitor switch, for example, but you'll still have complete visibility into for management and monitoring of our access points. Now, that being said, one cool thing that we are doing is, even though we can't manage third-party solutions as of yet, we can monitor them to a certain extent. So as long as any networking device uses logical link protocol, LLDP, which most devices do nowadays, our APs or our switches will see that neighboring device that we've connected it to. That's a competitor's device, and there'll be an LLD neighbor information that can then be sucked up into the cloud, and then we can visualize that. And so we can visualize your entire network in a topology view, and then you can then label it however you want. So we can still, as long as the LLDP protocol is in use, we can still visualize your entire network, even though we are not going to be managing, say, you know, a Cisco switch.
Okay, you know, I just want to make sure people know that they can still confidently deploy these Extreme solutions and still have a fairly cost-effective, easily manageable administrative platform with other products.
Oh, yeah, and absolutely. And look, I mean, obviously, for selfish reasons, we want you to buy all Extreme. But I mean, at the end of the day, especially when you get into big enterprises, very often they go with a two-vendor strategy, okay? You know, the advantage of the cloud is, at least from our strategy, is that you really do have a few management and monitoring all the way from the access layer to the core. Now, we can still provide the monitoring for to a certain extent, or the visibility, I should say, for your infrastructure, but you don't have to rip and replace a competitor's solution right away, although we would like you to. So.
Well, good. Why don't we do this, Dave? There's a full hour of great information. I want to encourage everyone. You can go to angelbait.com, extremenetworks.com for more information. We look forward to working with the broader AngelBeat and Extreme community to deliver lots of meaningful information. I think technology is going to change even faster in the future, as David was alluding to, as companies reevaluate their whole technology strategies. And, you know, from my own outsider perspective, I think Extreme is very well positioned to help lots of organizations embrace their digital transformation, which is only going to go faster in the next 3 to 6 to 12 months. Anything else, Dave, before I conclude the webinar and stop recording?
No, just Ron, thanks to everybody for showing up, and for everybody for listening to me ramble on. And I hope you'll have me back. You know, we can talk about Wi-Fi 6 some more, or whatever you like to talk about. Just have me back sometime.
And again, for people who might be viewing this on demand, make sure you go to extremenetworks.com. You can go to angelbeat.com. If you do have follow-up questions in the future, we'll make sure we, being AngelBeat and Extreme, get you answers right away. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. I'm going to end the webinar now.